I just arrived at a public land area in Wisconsin. This is a place that I've never hunted before, but I have scouted it twice. Once back in April, once in July. And basically what I was looking for in that April trip, I was hoping it to be kind of that nice early spring after the snow melts, yet before the greenish starts to come up, where I can really look at all the sign that accumulated over the past fall. But we still had 8 to 10 inches of snow with that late snowfall that we had. So I wasn't really able to see anything fresh at all. But in some of the small pockets where the sun had hit and melted the snow, I was able to find evidence of trails and droppings that just wasn't fresh. So my assumption is that, at some point during the year, this stuff is getting used like I had assumed based on the map that it would be. I'm anticipating going in today and hopefully confirming that there is indeed fresh sign back there. It's a long access. It's an access that's really best served by kayak. So I'm almost committing in a way once I get back to this spot, in terms of if it doesn't look that great, there's not going to be a great plan B. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I'll be able to get to this little island after I kayak in, and then off the side of that island, there's a little bit of a high ground area with some sparse trees that the deer could be using as bedding. So that's kind of my anticipation. We'll be able to see, obviously, once I get back there. Even if I don't see anything, the weather's great. We got a nice cold front, strong northwest wind, cloud cover. Just a great day to be out in the woods, full fall colors. So I'm looking forward to it. Brushing of a track and the leaves and some droppings. Definitely all matted down throughout here. It's tough to tell really how fresh much of this is though. So my initial plan for today was actually to go back to the same spot that I had hunted yesterday, not the exact same spot, but the same area, and basically just work down to the next region along that swamp where it looked like there was going to be some good sign I could set up on. The stuff that I was on last night, there was definitely enough sign to make me say I can't pass this up, but it's hard to tell, with the last time we had rain and all this, how exactly fresh that sign was. So what I would have liked to do is just keep on moving down that transition line until I find stuff that is obviously fresh enough to where I start seeing deer. But I wasn't able to get off of work today until probably like an hour and 15 minutes after what I was able to get off yesterday. So that completely took that place out of the equation because it's an hour and a half drive and another over an hour access. So what I'm doing instead today is I'm driving to a place that's only like 45 minutes, 50 minutes from my house. It's a place I have historical information on, experience with, but nothing yet from this year. I don't know who's been hunting where. I don't know, what the hottest food sources are there right now. So I kind of am lowering my expectations for what I might see for tonight. But hopefully I'll be able to pick up something that's hot right now and be able to see some deer. All right, so on the walk in here so far, I've seen more fresh deer tracks since our last rainfall 2 days ago than hunter tracks. Big plus there. As far as food, clearly there's still some acorns available, maybe not the whites, but at least some. Corn appears to have some tracks going in and out of it. Looks like they're starting to eat that already. The place that I'm planning on going to is kind of set up to take advantage of, number one, oaks if they're still falling, if they're still eating those trees. And then there's not too much more distance for them to get to the corn. It's on the same route. So I'm hoping that once I get in there, again, I'm going to see hopefully no hunter sign. This is going to be my biggest indicator. If I don't see any hunter sign and I at least see some indication of deer traffic still using that area, then I'm definitely going to set up right there. It was definitely a doe and a fawn, kind of working their way up the drainage on the opposite side of the ridge of me. And the fawn was probably 30 yards, but obviously there's a lot of stuff between me and those deer. The doe was about 44 from what I ranged. And she was broadside. I had a couple opportunities where I could see the vitals cleanly. But when I draw back and look at where the 20-yard pin was and what was in the way, what the 30-yard pin was, what was in the way, I never had a shot where it was like the trajectory of the arrow was going to have a clean path the whole way. And finally, she got just far enough up the drainage where the wind's kind of going back and forth like this. And I could see her. She picked her head right up, started looking around, and then they both kind of took back off the way they came from. So they definitely smelled me. There's no doubt about that. I think based on what I've seen coming in today, regardless of what I see for the rest of the night, this area in general, the sign seems to be a lot hotter, a lot fresher than the stuff I was hunting yesterday. I think for the next couple of days, even if I don't see anything today, I'm going to come back to this same general area, just pick a different spot every time, someplace where I haven't laid any ground scent. I would think I should be able to get on some deer. Out of all the places that I expected I might see deer movement today, I was not expecting anything like right on the access route that I took into the woods here. Pretty much no trails, but wouldn't you know it, there's a doe came in right from that area, kind of from that direction of that corn into the wood line. Of course, she got right on my access trail, smelled the boot scent and got all spooky and got out of here. But she was about at 20 yards at one point. That no shot opportunity, but definitely deer moving early, and it seems to be that there's a lot of deer kind of in this area. I'm still just kind of systematically working through this public land, just each time I go out picking a different spot. So far I've seen deer most every sit, not always coming right underneath me, but I'm getting visuals. So this morning we had a big front come through, and it's been 20-30 mile an hour northwest winds pretty much all day. So after the morning sit, what I decided to basically do is just do a little bit of in-season scouting, found some hot scrapes, and just kind of put together a little picture of what's going on exactly right now. But this evening what I'm doing is basically there's this little tiny drainage that I haven't really ever seen anybody hunt. It doesn't really look like much on the map, but I think with these high winds, even if there's not, like a big buck there laying in sort of an overlooked spot, there could be a decent chance that there could be a pocket of doe sitting down there, down in that drainage where it might be a little bit more sheltered. It should be fairly thick. I mean, I guess I'll sort of see what it looks like when I get back there. Never really scouted this spot before, don't know what to expect. All I can tell is that there appears to be somewhat of a trail, at least in a couple spots, leading into the woods around this area. So what my plan is basically I'm just going to slowly walk into this area. It's not very far. It's less than a quarter mile from the road before I get kind of dead-ended by the river. So as you can see, still pretty windy. Essentially when I came through that woods, I didn't see a whole lot of sign, but then I got down to this little flat area where it came to a bench, and I ended up seeing two does that I kicked out from kind of a little ditch within that bench. Kind of went back and forth on whether or not I decided I wanted to still sit here or not, but I figured there's enough wind noise around if there could be other deer filtering through this area. Straight behind me I have a nice little cut, nice little ravine, and then I got that area where I kicked those does up on the other side of me behind me, and basically out in front of me is just kind of this bench that has some it's got some white oaks, it's got a bunch of just kind of open terrain in general. Again, not a whole ton of sign, but obviously there's deer using this, and it's a place I really don't think ever gets hunted, so I'll sit it out for the rest of the evening and see what happens. That was unfortunate. I have a turkey tag and I would gladly shot that bird. I was actually getting ready to draw back on him, and then he turned and looked like he was going to come a little bit closer. Strangely, I didn't see any other birds with him. It looked like he was all alone. But I don't know what spooked him. I don't have any idea because I wasn't moving at all when he picked his head up and got out of here. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, hindsight, I would have probably drawn back and shot him earlier if I'd have known he was going to spook. But I mean, there's no way I could have known. So, oh well. So this morning I came right back to the exact same spot I was last night, same tree, and it sets up pretty nice for a morning sit because I kind of view this flat while I'm sitting on the edge of the ravine, and the thermals are taking all my scent down behind me. Right around sunrise, there was 2 deer that just went flying through that thicker cover. I didn't get a good enough look at them to see if it was some early chasing, which I have seen with smaller bucks around this time of the year, or if they just got spooked and it was 2 deer just flying through there. They never really slowed down. So far, of all the deer that I've seen, those 2 that I jumped yesterday when I first walked into this area, that smaller buck that came through last night, and then these 2 that I just saw come through, every single one of them has gone down to that same general area. You know, once the sun comes up and the thermals flip, I want to get down and go check that spot out and see if it's worth trying to find a tree to set up in for the evening. Just, south of the road, there's that big hill. That hill drops down and it gets kind of flat. There's this big bench here. And along this whole bench, there's a whole bunch of deadfall. And this is the same deadfall I kicked those does out of. They were a little bit further west. The buck that I saw last night, he came kind of right down into this area somewhere. And then those does I saw this morning just came flying through all this deadfall and went out toward the private land. Now on that side of the bench, it drops down. There's some big, wide open, flat river bottom. And there's a pretty decent trail that comes right up. There's this little ravine right here, tiny little ravine. There's a trail that comes right up it. And there's a trail that goes along that length, like for rifle. It might be a bad idea to get, I would think, way up in that big oak tree up there. Get past that fork. That might not be bad, because then you could probably shoot up into the hardwoods. You can obviously shoot down into all this bedding cover that I think the deer are using and moving through. And you could probably even shoot out, potentially even to that river bottom a little bit. So that would probably be my first pick of tree. This one here isn't too bad either. A little better shooting toward the hardwoods, a little better shooting toward this ravine crossover. But I think either one would probably work fine. So I'm sitting here right on the end of this point, leading out into a marsh. It's got some cattails, some shorter marsh grass, and then just a lot of kind of thick brush and some buckthorn back where I'm at, mixed in with the aspens. But where I think this doe was bedded was right on the end of the point, like right at the edge of that brush, probably about somewhere between, I'd say, 40 and 60 yards from me. And the reason I say that, a couple times throughout the afternoon, I thought I might have heard something and I'd get ready, but then nothing would happen. But then there were some unmistakable sounds that were for sure deer right at the end of that point. And probably 10-15 minutes later, more noise. And then finally I saw the doe come in right up on this heavy trail. So I imagine she was probably better right at the end of that point, 50 yards from where I set my stand up. And so this is one of the reasons why I always tend to be so paranoid about keeping everything quiet. She went down. I could hear her crashing in the cattails, so it's going to be a fun drag out of here. So you can see there's a wall of buckthorn. I was right up in that tree right there, so kind of hidden. A little bit of back cover with those aspen leaves, a little bit of front cover with those buckthorn, and then you can see how that trail leading out here is just pounded. Same thing right in here. This whole point is just pounded with sign. So that's exactly where I expected a deer to come from. Exactly what she did. Here's the arrow. Stuck in about 8 inches into the muck. Broadhead still looks fine. I got blood, white hair in the back because I'm sure the exit hole was probably pretty low. But I'm not really concerned about that. Just as expected, doesn't smell like guts at all. Just a clean pass through, exactly what I wanted. Got some blood right there. She only went about 55 yards as the crow flies into the cattails. And luckily, I was able to get help for the drag because this very well could be the biggest doe I've ever shot. I'm sending in the mandible for tooth annuli aging for my own curiosity. Throughout October, I've been moving around and keeping an eye out for bigger buck sign. While I know there are likely 1 or 2 bucks pushing Pope and Young and 3.5 years old from trail camera inventory in the public that I have been hunting, until I really had a good bead on not only where one was located, but how I could also set up with the thermals not busting me, I've been content trying to pad the freezer in parallel. Now that I've got a good bit of venison, I'm shifting over to just focusing on filling a buck tag between either Minnesota, Missouri, or possibly also Wisconsin.